Have you ever found yourself buried in worries, feeling as if you're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders? The truth is, no matter how hard you try to solve everything, there are things that are simply beyond your control. And it's precisely at this point that God steps in. He calls you to let go of these worries and surrender your problems into His hands. God is a specialist in performing impossible miracles, turning chaos into calm and despair into hope. Today, I want to talk to you about something fundamental. Stop worrying and trust that God will make the impossible happen in your life. This message is for you who are tired, who have tried everything and still feel stuck. Stay with me until the end of this video because I have a powerful word that can change your life. You'll discover how to give your problems to God and see Him work in ways you never imagined. Before we continue, I want to ask you something. If this message has touched your heart, help the channel grow. Share this word, subscribe, and leave your like. And if you are in need of prayer, leave your request in the comments. We'll be praying for each one of you, because together we can help many people. God's control over life's challenges. Life is full of challenges that often seem too big for you to handle alone. In these moments, it's essential to remember that God is in control of everything. Faith in God not only eases emotional burdens but also brings peace that surpasses human understanding. Imagine the weight lifting from your shoulders when you realize you don't have to carry the world's burdens alone. When we surrender our problems to God, He provides divine solutions, showing us that even in the toughest moments, we are not abandoned. It may be tempting to try and solve everything on your own, but that burden can be exhausting and lead to even more worries. Have you ever stopped to think about how many times you've worn yourself out worrying about problems that never happened? Trusting in God means resting in the certainty that He is taking care of everything. When you begin to trust Him more, you experience a sense of relief. For example, if you are going through financial difficulties, instead of panicking, trust that God, in control, will guide you toward a path of spiritual breakthrough. It's common, in the heat of the moment, to feel that you need to have a solution for everything, but often God wants to show you that the solution doesn't depend on you. He can perform impossible miracles just as He did in the past. Think of the miracle of feeding the 5,000. With just 5 loaves and 2 fish, Jesus fed a multitude. This reminds us that with God, even the little we have can multiply in surprising ways. You don't need to understand how it happens. Just trust that the impossible is possible when God is in control. Moreover, life presents challenges that test us, but these tests are also opportunities to strengthen our faith. When you stop fighting against life's flow and surrender your problems to God, you'll see that He is shaping you for something greater. Perhaps what you're facing now is just preparation for the great blessings to come. What matters is keeping your focus on the present and remembering that God is in control of the future. This surrender is liberating because when you trust in God, you realize that your worries don't have to dominate your mind. They are like passing clouds in the sky that soon dissipate. God's power transforms every obstacle into a new opportunity for growth. Think of the last time you faced a situation that seemed insurmountable, and then suddenly everything changed. It wasn't a coincidence, it was God's hand at work. Stop worrying, start trusting. Have you ever noticed how worrying about tomorrow drains today's energy? Being stuck in thoughts about what might go wrong in the future only robs you of peace in the present. The great truth is that tomorrow is out of our control but is completely in God's hands. When you place your faith in God, you begin to see things differently. God in control is a guarantee that everything will fall into place, even when problems seem unsolvable. Living in the present with gratitude is a powerful way to overcome constant anxiety. Think for a moment. How many times have you worried about something that didn't end up happening? Instead of spending energy imagining negative scenarios, why not start the day by handing over your worries to God? He knows everything and is in command. The divine solution may come in ways you never expected, but it always comes. Trust in God brings immediate relief, as if a great burden has been lifted from your shoulders. Instead of wasting time and energy on what might happen tomorrow, focus on living with purpose for what is in front of you today. Worrying about the future prevents you from enjoying the blessings of the present. God is already ahead, preparing the way. When you trust in Him, you live more lightly, knowing that what's out of your control is already in the hands of the One who can do everything. Each morning, try this simple exercise. Give God the situations that worry you and trust that He will do what's best. Surrendering your worries doesn't mean that problems will disappear overnight, but that you'll start seeing them differently. When you stop fighting your fears and start trusting God, things change. It's not about ignoring challenges, but acknowledging that God is in control of each one of them. Divine solutions appear when you least expect them. Often, the biggest change doesn't happen in the circumstances, but in your own view of life. Imagine waking up every day with the certainty that God is taking care of everything. This is the true peace that faith in God can bring. It's an inner transformation that leads you to stop carrying the weight of the world alone and trust that God is guiding your every step. You may not know what will happen tomorrow, but you know that God is already there, preparing the best for you. And that's enough for you to stop worrying. Prayer instead of anxiety. When life's challenges pile up, it's easy to let anxiety take over. The mind starts racing, creating scenarios that may never come true, and the tension only increases. However, there is a simple and powerful way out: prayer. Instead of letting anxiety rule your thoughts, you can give everything to God. Prayer is the tool that connects us directly to Him and reminds us that we are not alone on this journey. When you pray, you're surrendering all your worries to God, trusting that He has the divine solution you need. In times of uncertainty, it's common to think you need to solve everything on your own. However, the Bible teaches us that God takes care of every detail of our lives. Anxiety only hinders this process. So why not turn that anxiety into an opportunity to trust God more? A practical example is the habit of stopping to pray whenever anxious thoughts arise. It can be a simple prayer, something like, "Lord, I give this situation into your hands. I know you are in control." Faith in God dispels anxiety and brings peace to the heart. The power of prayer goes beyond words. It's an attitude of trust. When you pray, you are telling God that you believe He is in control and that no matter how big your problems are, He is greater. Prayer not only changes what's around you, but transforms your inner self. It strengthens you to face challenges with courage, knowing that the divine solution is already on the way. Moreover, prayer brings the presence of God closer to you, comforting you in the hardest times. Prayer doesn't need to be complicated or restricted to specific moments. You can pray anywhere, anytime, whether in the silence of your room, during a walk, or even in the middle of work. The important thing is to create that daily space to talk to God and trust Him with your worries. Instead of letting anxiety dominate your thoughts, Use prayer as a tool to hand everything over to God. As you pray, you'll notice that your mind calms and your trust in God grows. The anxiety that once seemed unbearable begins to dissipate. It's like a light shining in the darkness. Prayer brings clarity, direction, and peace, things anxiety can never provide. Instead of asking what could go wrong, you start wondering what extraordinary things God will do. Miracle of feeding the 5,000. The miracle of feeding the 5,000 is one of the greatest examples of how God acts in the impossible. Jesus had only 5 loaves and 2 fish to feed a massive crowd, and to human eyes, it seemed impossible. However, by handing the situation over to God, what seemed scarce was multiplied in extraordinary ways. This miracle reminds us that even when everything around us seems insufficient, God can turn the little we have into much when we place our faith in Him. The impossible becomes reality when we trust that God is in control. This miracle is a life lesson on how we shouldn't despair when we think the resources at our disposal are limited. You may be going through a phase where everything seems scarce, whether financially, emotionally, or in any other area of your life. Just as Jesus multiplied the loaves and fishes, God can multiply opportunities and resources in your life. It might be a new job that unexpectedly appears, or someone who crosses your path with the solution you needed. The key is to trust in God, for He always provides in ways we often can't foresee. What we can learn from this miracle is that God not only takes care of our material needs but also our spiritual ones. The crowd was hungry, and Jesus not only fed them physically but also imparted a great spiritual lesson. When we place our worries and challenges before God, He acts in ways that go beyond what we ask. The divine solution appears, and it is complete, meeting all our needs, both visible and invisible. This is the greatness of God's power, which acts in the impossible and transforms our lives in a full and complete way. An interesting point is that for the miracle to happen, people had to trust in Jesus and sit down, waiting for the provision. Often the biggest challenge is trusting and waiting patiently. Faith in God requires you to let go of anxiety and allow Him to act in the right time. Just as those people sat waiting for the miracle, you too can calm down and wait for divine action in your life, knowing that He knows what's best for you and always provides what is necessary. The miracle of multiplying the loaves is an invitation for you to reflect on the areas of your life that seem scarce and hand those areas over to God. No matter how limited your resources are, God can multiply them. He is capable of transforming any situation, as long as you fully trust Him. The provision He brings is abundant and often exceeds what you imagined. Faith and peace. Faith in God is the way to find peace that transcends any human understanding. When you fully trust that God is in control, the turbulence around you loses its power. The challenges still exist, but they no longer have the same emotional impact because you know that God is already working in your favor. This peace that comes from faith is like a shelter in the midst of the storm, protecting your heart from the worries and anxieties that the world tries to impose. When you surrender your problems to God, you are choosing to live a life of serenity, knowing that He is taking care of everything. Often, the lack of peace comes from the need to control everything. When you let go of that desire for control and place your trust in God, anxiety loses its grip. A practical example of this can be seen in everyday situations. Imagine a day when you're stuck in traffic, worried about being late. Instead of letting frustration take over, you choose to pray and trust that God is already in control and that somehow that delay has a purpose. It could be an opportunity for reflection, safety, or even connection with something greater. Faith in God teaches us to look beyond the immediate circumstances. This peace also reflects in how we deal with the future. When you live worried about what's to come, the present loses its color. Faith in God gives us the ability to live fully in the now, with the confidence that tomorrow is safe in His hands. The fear of the future is dissipated by the certainty that God is already there, preparing the best path for you. By handing over your concerns about the future to God, you live more lightly, knowing that He has a perfect plan for every situation that may arise. The peace that comes from faith doesn't mean the absence of problems, but a new way of facing them. Life continues to bring challenges, but your attitude toward them changes. You are no longer at the mercy of circumstances. You are firmly anchored in the trust that God knows what He is doing. This brings a spiritual relief that nothing else can replace. It's an inner peace that the world cannot offer because it comes from the deep certainty that God is in control of everything, even the things you can't understand. A clear example of this peace is in the lives of people who, even in the face of great difficulties, maintain an impressive serenity. They don't deny the challenges, but their faith in God sustains them. This unwavering faith is what allows them to face the hardest moments with a calm heart. You too can experience this same peace by surrendering your worries to God and trusting that He is already taking care of everything. God's power brings this tranquility that transcends any circumstance. Now, let's dive deeper into the biblical guidance on worry and how Jesus teaches us to live without carrying the weight of tomorrow. Biblical guidance on worry. Jesus teaches us in Matthew 6, verse 34, not to worry about tomorrow, for each day has enough trouble of its own. This verse is a powerful reminder that living anxiously about the future only prevents us from enjoying the present. When you trust in God, you understand that He is already taking care of every detail of your future. The focus, then, should be on living today with gratitude and faith, knowing that tomorrow will be guided by divine hands. This is a clear direction for you to free your mind from worries that can paralyze you and start trusting more in the divine solution that God offers. Often, the habit of worrying about what is to come steals our peace and prevents us from seeing the blessings that are already in front of us. Imagine the difference it would make to wake up every day with the mindset that God is already working on your future and that you only need to focus on the present. A practical example would be, instead of worrying about next month's bills, you decide to do the best you can today and trust that God will provide in due time. God's power can bring solutions beyond what you can imagine, and this only happens when you hand over your worries to Him. Jesus' guidance is simple but profound. Live now, trust in tomorrow. This doesn't mean you shouldn't plan or be responsible, but that anxiety about the future shouldn't rule your life. Faith in God frees you from the constant pressure of having to control everything. When you worry about what hasn't happened yet, you lose the opportunity to act with gratitude and purpose in the present. The secret is trusting that God in control is enough to ensure things happen in the best possible way at the right time. Another important point in this guidance is that it invites us to develop a mindset of trust. Instead of being stuck in fear of what might happen tomorrow, you start living with the certainty that God is already taking care of it. Think of how many times you've worried about something that never happened. The divine solution always comes at the right time, and trusting in this process is what keeps us steady. The Bible shows us that God never fails, and His Word is a reliable guide to living with more lightness and less worry. This biblical guidance leads us to a fuller life, where worries are replaced by trust in God. Every time you surrender your anxieties to Him, you are allowing divine peace to fill your heart. Living without the constant burden of worry is a gift God offers, and you only need to choose to accept it. The more you trust Him, the more your life is transformed in surprising ways. The fear of the future is replaced by the certainty that God already has a perfect plan. Now that you've learned how to stop worrying and trust in God, how about starting to apply these teachings today? What are you waiting for to give your problems into the hands of the one who can truly solve them? Remember, your faith is what will open doors and bring the peace you seek. So, I ask you, are you ready to let God take control and allow Him to make the impossible happen in your life? If this content has touched your heart in any way, leave a comment with your thanks or share your prayer request. We are here to pray for you and believe together that great things are coming. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. That way, you can continue learning, growing stronger, and above all, trusting that God is always by your side, ready to guide and bless you.